Scorched Horizon is quite a unique boss. It is weak to an attribute that no agent yet applies, summons other bosses' weapons, and can be confused into doing its attacks out of order. Let's dive into the new Deadly Assault boss mechanics and see how you can earn the most points in this fight. Like with the last several bosses, the fight starts with a control skill sequence. Dodge or parry the initial purple flash and get ready for its attacks. With previous control skills, you could rely on the parry button availability to determine the right timings. But with the Scorched Horizon, this trick no longer works. Patience is the key. For the first parry, wait for a small golden flash after the horizon rises up in the air. For the second, look for a red flash when the boss is at its highest point. The last attack that you need to parry to finish the control sequence comes out relatively fast, with no extra weight. Successfully countering the entire sequence triggers shutdown, dealing massive damage and daze to the boss. In my previous videos, I've already went through intricacies of dealing with control skills, so here I'll just share one tip. If you want to deal the most daze possible, you will have to parry all these attacks instead of dodging, and land the last one on your stunner. Horizon's control skill sequence consists of 3 hits, so if you just assist forward, you will finish with the agent that was on the field after the purple flash. So when choosing to dodge or parry it, do it with an intention of correcting your rotation. After the control skill sequence, the boss sends a chain of Miasmic Vortices towards your agent, that you have to parry to impair the horizon. If you miss any of the parries, you won't get a chance to fix your mistake, so be careful. Just like with the control skill, landing the last hit on your stunner will increase the daze dealt to the boss. After recovering from the first stun and onward, Horizon will randomly enter a Gale Scorcher state, in which it gets permanently infused with a new attribute, Wind. Triggering a different attribute anomaly during this state will inflict impaired status on the boss once per state, and deal damage based on the inflicted anomaly called Vortex. The Wind anomaly can't be overridden, so during this state, you can't trigger disorders between attributes of your agents. This self-inflicted Gale Scorcher state ends after 20 seconds have passed or when the boss gets stunned. While there is no limit to the number of vortices that you can apply within this state, you are still bound by a timeout between them, similar to normal anomaly application rules. During Gale Scorcher state, Horizon summons whirlwinds around the arena. Getting too close to one will cause your agent to get sucked in, and taking too long applying anomaly will result in the boss sending one in your direction, as indicated by a red landing strip. You can dodge them if needed, but it's better to focus on applying attributes to the horizon to clear them. Successfully dealing with each special state awards you performance points: 2000 for control skill, 1500 for knocking down the boss when it summons Miasmic Vortices, and the remaining ones for triggering anomaly attribute once per Gale Scorcher state. Scorched Horizon starts the fight with the control skill, and then immediately goes into Miasmic Vortices parry sequence. Handling these two special states back to back might lead to an overflow of energy and decibels when you finally get to the first stun. So here is the secret tech that you might want to try to spread stun windows more evenly throughout the fight. Your goal is to build enough daze on the boss so that it exits the control skill sequence directly into a stun. Fully parrying control skill deals about 30 days, slightly more or less depending on your team and rotations. So in order to achieve that, you will have to accumulate close to 70 days before it enters the control sequence. There are a couple of ways to do that. First one is more reliable, but is only doable with a handful of agents. It requires you to parry a subtle shoulder block that the boss does when you start attacking it after spawning. If you manage to successfully parry its block, you will stagger the boss, preventing it from entering the control skill summon. After that, the boss will perform two of its normal attack sequences, allowing you to deal substantial daze before it enters the control skill stage. But not all agents with an inbuilt parry can achieve that. Miyabi can't. Neither does Yanagi, nor Nangon. Within my roster, I was only able to stagger the boss with Banyue, but you wouldn't realistically bring him to this fight. And Yuzuha. I think that it has something to do with the word parry directly used in their skill descriptions, whereas other agents have the word block. Since you are quite likely to bring Yuzuha to this fight, let me show you the stat on her. The most reliable way to stagger the boss with Yuzuha is to use a dash attack and follow it with a hold basic. After that, feel the daze, deal with a control skill, and you can enter a stun window immediately afterwards. The second way to delay the control skill can be replicated with any agent. Simply don't hit the boss after a spawn. It will initiate the fight on its own, with one of the attack sequences. If you have an agent capable of interrupting the boss, Nangon is a good candidate for that. Staggering the boss out of the first attack sequence will force it to perform a second one, giving you ample time to build daze. If none of your agents are capable of doing that, you are at the mercy of RNG. Some of these boss attack strings are shorter than others, and won't give you enough parries. Try it out with your teams to get a feel of how much daze is needed to skip straight to the stun after the control skill. When Horizon recovers from the stun, it might choose to go into Gale Scorcher state instead of chaining Miasmic Vortices, which might be beneficial to your team if you are playing anomaly agents. By using this technique, I was able to get scores by 2,000 to 3,000 points higher than without it, even though typically it still leads to the same number of stun windows, so the effectiveness will depend on your team's ability to hold on to resources and utilize them during the stun. Before moving on to team suggestions, let's take a brief look at Scorched Horizon's attacks. Some of its attacks are straight copies from other bosses. Using the Defiler's weapon, Horizon performs two parryable swings, followed by a parryable ground smash. A similar sequence starts with the boss performing a couple of swings with Miasmic Grows, followed by a parryable ground smash, and an AoE attack that can only be dodged. This couple of swings can be a standalone attack string as well. Unknown corruption complex moves are used by the boss as follows. The sequence starts with a dodgeable laser, followed by a smash with continuous drilling, a parryable swing, and a couple of parryable smashes. Last two smashes can be parried by the same agent, and if it is a stunner, you can accumulate more days that way. Lastly, Scorched Horizon performs parryable claw and tail slashes, followed by a parryable smash. Scorched Horizon is weak to ice and wind, and resistant to a physical attribute. Its 12-second stun duration and 150 stun damage multiplier are quite average, the same with defense and anomaly gauge values. It is debuting at relatively low health, and while its daze meter is quite high, almost all of its attacks are parryable, giving you a lot of opportunities to fill the stun meter. When Horizon activates Gale Scorcher state, it applies a buff to itself, reducing crit damage taken by a total of 125%. To remove stacks of this buff, you have to keep applying anomaly attributes. Each one brings crit damage taken back up by 25% and increases a bloom damage. 125% sounds like a lot, but in practice this effect is less drastic than you might imagine. I tested this mechanic on Hugo, and the difference between hitting his total eyes on Horizon without a buff and with it came to roughly 35%. With the fight continuing on and more anomaly being applied, totalized damage eventually rose back. Most other DPS agents are not that dependent on critting one single hit, so while this boss buff will certainly affect your non-anomaly team's performance, it wouldn't make them completely unplayable. Anomaly agents that rely on blooms to deal damage are the best at scoring well against the Horizon. As usual with reduced crit damage taken boss buffs, it doesn't affect anomalies. Jane's core skill and Arya's M1 will still deal their full values. Despite the crit damage boss buff, Miyabi is the second choice to deal with Scorched Horizon. If you have her at M2 or higher, she will obviously have an easier time earning stacks, but the Gale Scorcher state that disables disorders only lasts for 20 seconds once or twice throughout the fight, so you will still be able to earn enhanced basics as is. Nangon is going to be her best teammate, giving lots of stuns, but you can also take advantage of one of the deadly assault buffs and bring Vivian or Bernice to reduce ice resistance through their blooms. You can also try using Grace with potential awakening, since all of these boss mechanics still work with her evasive assist. Just be mindful to manually choose the direction for parrying its usual attacks. Lastly, if you were never an anomaly fan, bring an ice DPS. With Horizon's normal defense value, no class is particularly disadvantaged, and even pen ratio builds are welcome too. If you pair your DPS with Lycan, you can apply enough ice attribute to trigger Vortex at least once per Gale Scorcher state, and any subsequent anomaly triggers will remove the stacks of the buff even after the state has already ended. Despite some of its restrictive sounding mechanics, this boss is quite flexible, at least for now, so even non-optimal teams will perform adequately. Thank you so much for watching. If you have found this video helpful, please leave me a like, and consider checking out my other boss guides and essays related to the game. I will see you soon. Bye bye!